Let's compare the GRACE report with one of Theresa Sidebotham's IHART reports. The GRACE report is 76 pages, and right from the start, we see a lot of footnotes. They're not just saying things, they're explaining why they're saying them. It jumps right into explaining what precipitated the investigation and report and who they are, including their qualifications. Page 6, we're at the summary of facts and analysis. Starting with leadership, talks about child abuse at the school. There's talk of individuals, including names and the abuse they perpetrated, pages and pages of description, which really highlights the gravity of what happened. There's statements from missionary kids explaining what it was like for them, the spiritual abuse. Then it discusses the failed response of the mission. Several pages, including excerpts of notes. They describe all of the attempts of families to get leadership to do something, all of the opportunities leadership had over the course of many years to respond. After 46 pages of details, they start their recommendations. Specific recommendations are given to demonstrate repentance. They talk about what it looks like for the mission to distance itself from personnel who harm children and specify what that looks like for each person. Then there is a section on prevention, followed by conclusion. At page 68, there is an amendment with some further definitions and information regarding their findings. Let's look at the IHART report under Theresa Sidebotham. My initial reaction is this looks like a report I would proudly turn in when I was in high school. The pictures, the fonts, a lot of visual stimulation and distraction. So although this report is 85 pages, the fact that it includes 7 countries and 1 region, and if pictures continue to take up this much space, the content is probably minimal. There's a table of contents and some info on IHART, an introduction, an explanation of the objectives, including dates that don't seem accurate to me. They first concluded there was abuse in 2010? Lots of wasted space and propaganda, in my opinion. A letter from Brian Coombs, a letter from investigators. On page 9, we start an explanation of time frame and vocabulary. More wasted space, standards and definitions of abuse, including a history on corporal punishment, and Ethnos360's historical position on it. More definitions and historical context, current definitions. At page 20, it talks about evidentiary standards. Page 23 begins an explanation of the investigative process, including discussion of the investigative team and their recommendation panel. At page 30, a section on historical background for NTM fields and leadership, maps and country stats. Page 44 begins a discussion on the historical background related to MKs. Do we see what they're doing? Pages and pages of history and context, nearly 50 pages in, and we've learned nothing related to their findings. Page 49, they explain their sources. Page 52, they begin to discuss findings, some general info. Okay, page 53, we have findings. A little box with 2 paragraphs for the entire history of West Brazil, 2 paragraphs for Colombia, 3 sentences for Mexico, 5 paragraphs for Venezuela. Notice how much space these boxes take. Half of the page is empty. 3 paragraphs for Indonesia, 3 paragraphs for the Philippines, 3 paragraphs for Thailand, and these are minimalist paragraphs. This is a small amount of information. Then we have a page worth of information on the United States. Again, a lot of white space. On page 60, they decide to discuss factors that may contribute to abuse. Page 61 is about leadership culpability, including standards and an explanation of findings, and shocker of all shockers, no leadership culpability in West Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico. A confusing explanation of leadership culpability in Venezuela, where the investigative team and recommendations panel can't seem to agree. No culpability in Indonesia. The Philippines, we have another case where the investigative team and recommendations panel can't agree and cause confusion. Thailand has no leadership culpability. 1 leader was culpable in the U.S. and an ambiguous leadership culpability for rehiring and retaining a member, but there are some excuses. Page 66, Reflections and Opinions, which lays out the culture of the organization in each country. Some general opinions which begin with the assertion that missionaries and MKs would like to close this chapter, and some other ambiguous summaries of MK's thought. Page 77 talks about current policies and moving forward, a letter from then CEO Larry Brown, some misleading statistics, a conclusion, 1 page of footnote, and finally, image credit. And here is a side-by-side visual of the difference between the two reports, with the GRACE report being on the left and the IHART World report being on the right.